Hi guys, welcome to the Astro Dude. In today's video, we're going to be interviewing Ahmed Noufal. Ahmed Noufal is a nuclear engineer at X Energy. In this interview, he had a lot of great and unique answers about nuclear energy, the small modular reactors he's working on, and the future applications of nuclear energy. Overall, it was a great privilege to have him on the channel. He was very nice to talk to, and it was a great privilege to have somebody of his expertise on the channel. And before we get into this interview, make sure to subscribe. And if you already have, then you're just awesome. Anyways, let's get into this interview. So we're on with Ahmed Noufal. So tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got interested in engineering, and specifically nuclear engineering.
Thanks, Aiden, for having me on your YouTube channel and whatever social media you have. Well, I started studying sciences in general, chemistry and mathematics as a young science student. And I was very interested in modeling. During my studies and undergrad studies, when I was about 20 to 22, I was very interested in modeling behavior of matter in addition to behavior of systems. So when we mention behavior or modeling, you can model a system of financial system or a physical system, like in mechanics. So that was the start of my interest, but I did not dig deep into physics. So I decided to just move on and see what opportunities I have out there in industry. And I landed a finance job, which was not something I would ever expect. So, but interesting enough, the connection appeared over years that while I was working in the finance, investors and large hedge funds are actually interested in investing in industrial projects, specifically energy. And at that time, and let's say in 2012 and 2013, solar and wind and renewables in general were really big part of the investments, and they were very interesting and attractive to investors all around the world. And my bank, the one I used to work for, used to partner or manage hedge funds investments, and all the money that was coming was going into energy projects, and that was actually catching to me. So I maintained my job in finance until I decided that I should move on to modeling markets and basically get more involved in investment management and see why are they interested. And I started reading a lot about energy markets and technologies, and I found that renewables, solar and wind in particular at that time, and nuclear were actually competing, and solar and wind were winning. But I figured also that as a nuclear companies such as X Energy and others, and NuScale and many others all around the world were born. So X Energy was born in 2009, and while the solar and the wind were excelling in the world, the nuclear energy companies realized the need to change their strategy and come up with new technology to adapt. So after careful reading, I thought I fit more into the nuclear because of my background in mathematics and physics. And I decided to go back and get my master's degree in nuclear engineering. And I, of course, with reading enough about it, you don't get enough education at colleges, regardless where you go. So you definitely need to get yourself educated by reading external resources. And I got involved with research and non-proliferation, like basically protecting nuclear material from being used to manufacture weapons illegally. And they got also in research addressing the economics of renewables versus nuclear, which is the latest we just published. I and a former professor. If you're following me, by the way, on LinkedIn, you'll get a lot of that. So, and I basically started my nuclear engineering with X Energy. So as the first professional position that I've ever held would be the nuclear engineer position at X Energy. So that's the story, making the story too long.
No, that's great. Uh, so you talk about these nuclear reactors. So small modular nuclear reactors, or what they called SMRs.
SMRs,
Um,
yes.
can you explain how they're going to be how their safety might compare to like light water nuclear reactors in terms of safety and the economics?
Okay. So comparing two different technologies, but they're within the same industry. So light water reactors, which the conventional known right now to us, were built in 1960s, 50s, 70s. Okay, those are pretty old. SMRs are not new technologies either. They're well known. They have been designed and probably tested in the past, just like the conventional ones, the light water reactors. However, they were never built because of their economy. Now, as things I told you evolved with competition with the renewables, I mean, when I say renewables, I mean solar and wind being introduced intensively and aggressively into the markets. Nuclear energy engineers realized the need that they need to change the way they represent the nuclear industry, provide more safe, economic, and reliable way of sourcing energy from nuclear reactors. So let's compare between them. We cannot really touch on all the points, but the major things. Okay, now building conventional light water reactors, whether they are boiling water reactors or pressurized water reactors, is no longer a good option in the power industry. And the reason is their high cost and their volume. They produce a tremendous amount of energy, hundreds and thousands of megawatts being produced. And the changes that happen to the grid, we cannot receive that much of energy all the times. Light water reactors are not reactors you can shut down and restart and basically dispatch anytime you would like. Okay, they have to run all the times. They have to produce certain amount of energy. They have their own safety systems that we need to consider, and their refueling and life a fuel cycle, of course, is a big part of the operation. So the way they operated is you build a new light water reactor. It has to run all the times, and you have to use the energy that it produces. There's a huge cost in terms of building them, construction and operation. There's a huge cost, and fueling also is a high cost. So those that were built in the 60s, 70s, 50s are still operational, and they should extend their lifetimes actually in terms of economics. But they're building new identical or similar reactors to those is no longer a good option. Why? Because SMRs are more flexible. Let's say they can produce smaller amounts of energy when we need them. We can there are many studies about their economics. We're not going to touch that, but in regards of their economics, it's like building cars. When you build a prototype, one car, it's going to be very expensive. But when you're building a massive amount of cars, the cost of production will definitely become lower, and it becomes more considerable for you. So SMRs are technically the same idea. If you're looking at a prototype, it's not going to be economic. But when we start mass producing SMRs and distribute them where they needed, they're actually very effective. They produce a lesser amount of energy that we can use versus the conventional light water reactors. So instead of dealing with 1,000 megawatts, you'll be dealing with 200. That's more reasonable in certain areas. They're also good because we can use them in off-grid areas, remote areas. For example, northern Canada and western Canada, they're still using diesel generators in certain remote areas. Instead of us having an off-grid area rely on diesel and suffer during the winter because of the supplies and the prices, we can just set up an SMR that's reliable for 20 or 10 to 20, 30, 40 years and have it run and supply those remote areas. That's not something you can do with the conventional ones, right? The other thing now, SMRs, some of the SMRs are mobile, so they can be used for many different applications, including military applications. So they can be moved and transported where they're needed and can be used and restored again. They can be shut off and on. I shouldn't say shut off and on, but that's a way to simplify how they operate. A lot easier than what the conventional light water reactors are. Probably shutting down a light water reactor takes a considerable amount of effort and time and cost versus an SMR, And the other thing is the fuel. So fueling SMRs is a totally different process than fueling a light water reactor. Fueling light water reactor might take weeks, might cost several millions, and it should happen in a certain arrangement. There are fuel engineers that are specialized in that, but the SMRs allow you to fuel online. Basically, you can always refresh the fuel by adding more without stopping operation.
That's a great explanation.
Very good. Excellent.
So you talk about these new nuclear reactors, the SMRs. Mm-hmm. With your work at X Energy, what design the domains of the design, which ones are kind of like prioritized?
X Energy is designing a high temperature gas cooled reactor. So it's a high temperature reactor for a reason. This was chosen. I can tell you what X Energy is looking to do and why it's a smart selection of a technology. So the reactor itself is a high temperature gas cooled reactor. The fuel is a pebble fuel. Pebbles are basically balls of fuel. What we are used to are the fuel rods, right? So they're pipe-like structures that are inserted in the reactor. But in X Energy, we're using the pebble fuels. And the pebble fuels, they're just like a billiard ball. We can say they're the size of your palm. They can fit a palm. A single pebble is a palm size, and a diameter probably 10 centimeters in diameter. The main difference in terms of the technology, the reactor itself, high temperature gas cooled reactors produce energy at high temperatures, and that's beneficial for applications, industrial applications. So for example, now that in the energy or the power market, we're looking to supply heat and power to industrial operations that are carbon free. So they're clean energy. In order to do that, you have to provide them in many operations or industrial operations. They need high temperature. For example, producing steams and heavy metal industries, they all need high temperatures. So in order for you to decarbonize a big portion of the industrial operations, you actually need to supply high heat source, which is what X Energy is going after. Now, that's in terms of the reactor itself. But for the fuel, why is it a pebble fuel? Pebble fuel is also called is a form of the trisofuels, and trisofuels are proving to be safe to operate because they contain probably 99, not probably, we're according to simulations, they can contain 99% of the waste, the radioactive waste that's considered harmful to the operating staff and to others. And that's a big deal when it comes to waste management. When we are let's say advocating for nuclear energy, and we are advocates of TRISO, it's for a reason. It's a safe fuel where there's no harm being done to the crew that's operating the plant, and there's no harm being done to the environment. Nothing escapes that pebble after being spent, after being used. And when you're trying to waste manage it, or let's say recycle it in the future, I'm not sure about the recycling efforts in the US, But if you're looking to recycle it, you can source the new fuel from it, hopefully, with no harm to anyone, and basically reduce the amount of waste you're actually depositing in those depositories. So trisofuel is safe in terms of radiation shielding. The second, economic. Once you produce those SMRs, as I told you, a mass production line, then you can produce the trisofuels at lower costs, right? So that's well known. So if you're producing SMRs, you have to produce the fuel for them, and if they go at the same level of production, then the cost will drop for both the fuel and the technology itself, which is the SMR. And a third benefit of using the trisofuel, let's say, is the proliferation resistance. So let's say you export this technology to a certain state that's outside the US, certain non-nuclear state or nuclear state, and some bad party, let's say, it takes control of a facility. Even if they even if they obtain the nuclear material, which is the trisofuel, they will never be able to extract the material and use it in producing weapons. So that's very, very important. So we talked about the safety in terms of operating and managing the spent fuel. And we talked about the non-proliferation resistance. And we talked about the economics being at mass production. Definitely, it's going to make more sense than prototype level, of course. And the flexibility. So as I told you, since it gives you the ability to fuel online, there's a flexibility in operation, and it can produce, you can control how much of energy you're sourcing from your SMR, which is something that we're not able to do with the light water reactors. Let's say you have a series of SMRs set up to produce 1,000 megawatt. They can actually produce less than that to accommodate your needs. Instead of you dealing with 1,000 and wasting some that you cannot use, you will be able to just lower the production or the generation and get as much as you need.
So with these new advanced nuclear reactors, can you talk about some of the applications? Particularly, there was one about a few weeks ago. There was a idea that became very popular on the internet. It was kind of like remastered from the 1950s of a nuclear-powered, what they call a sky hotel, or essentially a nuclear electric aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
How practical do you think that is?
Well, the last project I have read about was the Pluto project. It was done, or those ideas were popular in 1950s and during the Cold War, but I haven't heard of any prototypes being built. There are many. It's a very interesting and ambitious idea. I'm a fan of it myself, but I don't know how practical that would be, given the need to shield and protect the crew from radiations coming from the engines, risk of a crash. So what happens in the case of accidents, the need to manage the landings and the takeoffs. And that's still, I think there are a lot of questions to be answered before we consider such a good idea. I'm a fan of it again myself, but I don't know how practical that would be. For outer space applications, I think nuclear energy fits perfectly. Obviously, would probably it's the only source of energy that we can use in outer space. But as an aircraft, hotel, that's beautiful idea again. Just like aircraft carriers and so on, they keep working until forever, right? that's how it feels. But still, we need a way to land and take off and basically maneuver safely, avoid crashes. And in case of a crash, what would happen? Radiation shielding. There's massive radiation shielding needed to provide safety for those crew working on it and the passengers themselves as well. So many questions to answer. So I'm not sure about the idea itself. I hope to see that happening soon.
Oh yeah, me too. That'd be really cool, but of course, it has to work safely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, laws of
Safety,
physics.
safety is a very important thing we need to look for in any design. I'm sure safety is the only thing that's holding it back. You know.
Yeah, unfortunately, the laws of physics always goes in the way of any cool idea. So,
I
oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
Oh, so when you talk about these you're talking about outer space. How ideal are the SMR nuclear reactors are for powering like a base on the moon or a base on Mars?
I am not sure how that would be applicable, to be honest, in outer space. So, um, sourcing energy from nuclear sources on the moon or any other planet is something that scientists have been considering and researching. I'm not sure if we will be building similar SMRs to whatever we do on Earth. When we are building SMRs on Earth, we're actually following the laws of physics, including fluids and fluid mechanics and thermodynamics. And I don't know how different those laws would be in the outer space. So I cannot answer your question. Maybe someone from the space industry should introduce that. And I would love to see that video on your channel.
Oh, thanks.
I want to watch it myself. Yeah.
uh, when talking about these nuclear reactors, the SMR design, and these TRISO fuels, are there any other potential future applications of these?
Yes, there are so many possible applications. As I introduced while I was talking today, two of them: power generation, basically generating electricity, and industrial heat applications, basically providing energy or heat to industrial operations to decarbonize them. Desalination. So, in many different countries around the world, including Middle East and Africa, there are poor water resources or no water resources, clean water resources. So, um, given the promising energy SMRs providing, so energy source SMR can provide, we can set up desalination stations for those countries, and we can improve the social life and economic of those societies by employing the SMRs in those societies to do such a thing. Desalination of water is a big application that I would expect the SMRs to be the best source of energy to power those stations. Another application would be space applications, as we just discussed. I'm not sure how SMRs in particular can play in that, but nuclear energy and nuclear energy is definitely a source of energy in the space. But are we going to be using SMRs or something else? I have no idea yet. Hopefully, we'll hear from the experts soon. Other applications, I would think production of hydrogen, since hydrogen is now considered as a green source of energy. I think SMRs will help us produce hydrogen economically. I'm not sure how that is going to happen, but that's definitely an application that Siemens is heavily interested in. Do you have any idea about their projects in Siemens?
I'm sorry.
Do you know Siemens, the company Siemens?
Oh, I've never heard of Siemens.
Siemens, yeah, they have a huge interest in hydrogen production. I can share with you a few articles if you'd like.
Oh, cool.
Sure.
So we talked about all these future applications, and of course, the next generation probably needs to learn a lot to get into working on those applications. So, what advice would you give students in STEM who want to work in the field and all those different fields? And
Amazing. Good question. Amazing. Well, my advice would be look ahead of you. So we don't want to look at the current status of anything. Technology is evolving and improving really quickly. We need to be ahead of the game. So we're expecting a clean, I'm talking about my field. So we're expecting a clean source of energy. We're expecting a decarbonized economy. And we're expecting more SMRs, more solar, more wind. We definitely need people who are able to operate and maintain those technologies in the future. So we need more nuclear engineers that are specialized in managing power grid and applications such as space applications, radiation shielding, as you just asked about the aircraft, the nuclear powered aircraft. If we have those smart future engineers focus their studies and research on shielding, we probably can come with a very powerful idea to apply that, right? So nuclear engineering in particular is a young science. We definitely need smart people like yourself and smart future engineers that can improve it, take what's present right now and work it to the future applications. Definitely reading and following up with technology now. I do encourage people to or students your age or other prospective students to connect with more senior and junior. Everyone is open to talk. Everyone is open to lead and mentor. We all at some point needed a mentor, and I myself had many excellent examples in my school and after school. One of them is my former professor, Rainer Kerr. And if you really show interest to those seniors, you definitely will get the support you needed. So I would expect, Aiden, you'll be a leader very, very soon in your field. Hopefully, I'll hear those news soon. So definitely focus. So plan ahead and focus on what matters. And the second advice is reach out to mentors and try to talk to senior people in your field of area, like in a field of interest. So if you're interested in nuclear, definitely stick around. There are open sources online, and there's LinkedIn too. So LinkedIn is a tunnel to success, to be honest. So you can connect with people around the world within the same area focus, and then you can see all of their interesting posts. Doesn't matter how much you benefit from them right now. I myself don't understand everything happens on LinkedIn sometimes, right? But we have to keep ourselves linked to those people until we are ready to move on and take a role, basically.
Thank you so much. You had so many great and unique answers. It was a great privilege to have some of your expertise on the channel. Thanks for coming on.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much, Ahmed Noufal, for taking the time to appear on this channel. Anyways, have a great day, and bye.